Signore, tu sei luce del mondo e rischiari le nostre tenebre. Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison, Christe eleison, Christe eleison, Kyrie eleison, Kyrie eleison.
So I'm going to ask the Lord for His word, and I'm going to read to you from the book of Exodus, chapter 23, 1. It says, "Do not make false statements, and do not join hands with the wicked by being a malicious witness. Do not follow the majority when they do evil, or when they pervert justice in a lawsuit. Do not be partial, not even to the poor. If you see your enemy's ox or donkey going astray, take it back to him. When you see the donkey of a man who hates you falling under its load, do not pass by, but help him. Do not deny justice to any of you poor in a lawsuit. Keep away from lies. Do not slay the innocent or the just, for I will not forgive the wicked. And do not take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the clear-sighted and perverts the sentence of the just. Do not oppress a stranger. You know what it is to be a stranger, for that is what you were in the land of Egypt. Do not call upon other gods. Don't let their names be heard on your lips. 3 times each year you shall celebrate a feast in my honor. You shall keep the feast of unleavened bread, as I commanded you, and eat unleavened bread for 7 days at the appointed time in month of Abib. For it was then that you left Egypt, and do not come to me empty-handed." The word of the Lord. So I'm going to do this reflection based on what we will conceive as obedience. And obedience is like a big word. We know that we are all called to be obedient, but a lot of the times we don't really know exactly what it means, because it seems to be like we live in a world where obedience is relative. So obedience is based on a lot of circumstances that surround us, and that's why people have gone so far away from God today, because the culture we live in is a culture that teaches us that we are to obey according to convenience. We are to obey in what is to our benefit, and also if it pleases everyone around us, and if it benefits everyone around, is good. So goodness is not anymore based on God's law. Goodness is based on people's common share and benefit. So that's why all these new laws came along, and they keep on multiplying those laws. They are very, very abundant today. The laws that will protect everyone's rights and will provide the benefits for all. But God is not involved in that. It's just people trying to make a better living on their own, without anything to do with God. And I'm sure that what God was telling us through the book of Exodus in this short passage I read is reminding us that we are under His law if we want to be His children. And one of the things that we have to really acknowledge in order to claim that inheritance of God by being children of God, God's people, is to understand that if we are His people, we are also His law. We belong to His law, because that is belonging to a family. If you are a child, you are in obedience to your parents. Otherwise, if you are not in obedience to your parents, you are a rebel, and then you don't belong to the family in the way you should belong, because the only way to belong to the family is if you obey the family. Otherwise, you will be the problem of the family. You will not be the natural son that was given life to belong to a family in obedience. And today we have this incredible situation with obedience, because that's why we have divorce, abortion. That's why we have all these movements that we have today, anti-life in so many ways, because people are not obeying any law that has to do with God. They are obeying only a personal life that dictates you that whatever benefits you and benefits everybody else is good, regardless of what it is. That's why all people do today is unite, gather around ideologies or philosophies, and if they have many, then they make it good. See? Because they think it's good because many are following. And this is the way the movements of today are put together. If there are many believing the same, it must be good. Law has to be passed for that to be real. And they make it real just because there are too many. So if you want to pass a law, all you need to do is get enough people for that, and they pass it. Because there's too many wanting the law, so they pass it. It's like in the beginning of God's teachings to His people, trying to straighten them up, or trying to straighten us up, and to give us salvation, redemption, the preparation before Jesus' incarnation. The people of God didn't have a king. Do you remember before they had a king? And all of a sudden they begin to imitate the pagans, and they notice all these pagan countries, and they had kings. So the Jews got contaminated with this kind of influence and demanded from God a king. And you know what happened? The first king they got was a king that surprised them, because it ended up being a terrifying king. And what happened is that God continued giving them kings. They diminished the state of obedience, and then they brought upon themselves something they didn't need, something that enslaved them, something that wasn't necessary. The priest, the prophet was enough, but they didn't want that. They wanted more. They wanted a king. They wanted power, human power. And this is what happens with any relationship we have with obedience. We are to obey. You see, when someone is obedient to everything. To everything. Is coherent in everything that person does. You can tell when someone is disobedient in the little things, in the very little things. They break in every law, everything. Just in a very simple life. I remember when I came back into the faith, and I went back to California to my day-to-day life. It was very difficult because I had to change everything, because I noticed I was crooked in everything in my life. I was speeding with my cars when I wasn't supposed to. I was blowing traffic lights. I was like stepping on everybody's toes and blowing everybody's space. I didn't care about anyone, and I couldn't believe how wild I was. I was watching myself in awe, saying, I am an absolute disaster. So how am I going to do this? I'm already old, and how can I change an old person like me to do things right when I've been doing this so much that now it's automatic? I don't even think, and I'm doing it. It's like no matter how much I know this is wrong, I end up doing it just like that. And then I'm sorry, but it's done, and it's horrible to know that I am blowing it all the time and violating every single law. And without any effort, just doing it, because I had been doing it all my life, and I found it. To me, it was natural to be an outlaw, so to say. I was breaking any law I could, any law. In not only laws of government, also human laws. I will take over people's rights and take over people's spaces and opportunities and take advantage of anyone if I could. Because that was a business world where you have to win, and you have to make it, and you have to take advantage of any opportunity, because you are to make it on your own. You are to set your goals and achieve them. And that is the type of mentality that people has in this kind of civilization we are living. And that sets you up in a very selfish type of life, and that life is completely away from God. You couldn't possibly be obedient to God if you're living up to this type of culture. If you are trying to survive with all the standards that are set up by this society, it's impossible. Unless You are so coherent in what you do that you are able to take the best out of what you have around in this culture and be an example for everyone and show people that if you are obedient to God, you can survive within the world without being part of it, without being part of this incredible decadence. But this is a challenge that we are all facing, because whatever we do, we all belong to this society and we belong to this culture. We are part of this culture. It's like we were created by God to live within this culture. So this culture is part of our teachings. This is our school. Because how do you make the grade in a culture that is all against God? Because this is like the culture of death. And how do you make the grade here? I think the more we penetrate ourselves with God, the more we understand that this world, the way it is the greatest opportunity for us to be faithful to God if we really understand the challenge of letting go of what this world is offering us, what is served on the table. What is served on the table, 99% of what is on the table is not good. It's like when you watch TV. It's like 99% of what you watch is horrifying. Everything, the news, all the shows, everything. If you really look at it, it's horrible. Most of the things are mocking God. They are destroying all kinds of principles and blowing the integrity of human beings and making fun of things that are sacred. And it's like horrible. And it's not that you don't need to be an scrupulous or fanatical human being to speak like this. It's just a reality. If you have the principles of Christianity and you are really faithful to God and you understand what morality is about, you understand what purity is about, you understand what obedience is about, you know there are few things in this culture that you can be part of. Very few. You have to be very selective, because the next thing you know, you participated in things that are really crooked. It's like parents sometimes find themselves hanging out with children that are living in mortal sin, happily living in mortal sin, apparently, right? And they have to accept horrible things, and sometimes parents become live in omission, because they don't even have the strength anymore to exhort the children, because the culture is so strong, such a strong influence that mutes you. You know, you become mute. You don't even know how to say it, how to express it. You cannot even say anything to your children or to your friends. And then you find yourself trapped in a situation where there are so many people going against God, and they live naturally against God, appear to be happily against God, and then you are in the midst of them, living within God, and not knowing how to state your point, how to bring about the faith to those people, or how to be a witness. And this is a great challenge. But within this culture, we find also an amazing opportunity for holiness. Because if you manage to really be within this culture and be real, then you are not only achieving great levels of sanctity, of holiness, but you're also giving a lot of life to those that are dead, people that are completely lost in the world around you. And we are equipped to be within this culture, because God is perfect and He created us to be within this culture. I tell people, when you see the young people of today, the youth today, they know, they come with a chip. They don't need to learn to read the manual of anything. The most sophisticated technology, they get it like this. Even the little children, the little ones. Sometimes I ask a 7-year-old, come over, can you show me how to use this phone? In a second they change it, they move it, they do all this stuff. They have never been taught, they just picked it up. They came with the program, to survive within this culture of today. And we came also, they are like natural within that culture. And we all been created by God and equipped to be here for these times. So it's not that we are living a terrifying world that we don't understand. We do understand what's going on, all of us. It's just that the closer you get to God, the more you understand that this is wrong. And I'm sure that every generation through history, ever since we were thrown out of paradise from the very beginning, every generation found the same we found. A lot of people that are disobedient, evil, a lot of wrong in the world, a lot of injustice, and this has been always the world. When we hear the word world, we have to remember that world doesn't mean creation or earth. World is a spirit, the spirit of the world, which is worldly, means people that worship creation and creatures and worship themselves. That is being worldly. But being in the world doesn't mean to be evil. What is evil is to worship the world, or that means being of the world. And God is trying to get us to understand this mystery of what the world is about. Because a lot of people confuse the world with the earth and creation. And it's not. Because the world is a spirit. A lot of people belong to the world. So where do they belong? To the earth? No, they belong to a spirit that gets them to worship temporary life. And they turn the earth, creation, into an idol. And they worship. That's why they render a cult to their lives. But not because they render a cult to Creator. Sino they render a cult to creation and creatures. And that's why the difference between worldly people and people that are of God in the world is that one belongs to the spirit of the world, that is Satan, and the other belongs to the spirit of God, the Creator. And we have to draw a line between the two that is very clear. And one thing we can never do, we will never pretend, we'll be able to pretend to be in both sides, that is the lukewarm. The nature of the lukewarm is like the parent that has the children living in mortal sin, welcomes them on Sunday with all this dysfunctional life, and never mentions a word about God or about righteousness and teachings as to how to straighten up their lives. So they are, at a moment on Sunday, living with a dysfunctional family as if it was normal, as if it is something you have to accept. And then the rest of the week they pretend they are of God because they live in their daily life with God. But that day, they are living outside God because they had the opportunity to educate the children and tell them what to do. They blew it because they didn't do it. And our duty is not to drop the book of the law on the heads of people and hit them with it, like the Pharisees. No, our job is to lovingly, charitable, be firm, and always be steady in this firmness. It's like my mother used to visit me in California very often, all the way from Colombia. And I will not go to Colombia. I went there very few times after I left there when I was very young. And so she will come to California and she will always tell me, I am not very impressed with your success or your money. I'm very concerned about your soul. If you die living the life you are living, you are going to be condemned. That's the way she will tell me. She will tell me that with a smile, but very firmly. And everything will shake inside me, but I play brave and I say, Mom, your religion is false. The God you worship is false. There's no such a thing as sin or hell. That's all made up. She will just be there watching, looking at me like, oh, when is he going to get it? See? But she will always tell me. And I never forget that she always told me and remind me. She never bought what I was doing. Never accepted it. I will come all excited to tell her about my great adventures and achievements, and she will not be impressed. She said, the only day I will be impressed is when you come back to God. Otherwise, I'll never be impressed. Whatever you do is nothing to me. So, and that's, she told me right in my face. She never applauded me for anything I did because I was away from God. And how could I ever forget that? Because now I understand everything she was doing. I always respected her for that, but I never obeyed her. Never obey. So obedience is so important to understand what it means. You know, it's like we can be very kindly disobedient. See, like children could be so kind and loving to the parents, like I was to my mother. But I was a disobedient child. I was just making her suffer. I was not doing what I was supposed to do. And my mother was terrified. And the reason why she went to visit me there, it wasn't because she was missing me. It was because she was worried about me. She was worried about my salvation. And that was the reason she went. Obviously, she loved me for many other reasons, but that was the main reason. She was the reminder of salvation. And that bell that was ringing always was a bell that I felt deep inside me. Regardless of how lost I was, because I was gone. I was deep down in the pit of darkness in the life I was living. And still, the bell of my mother ringing always rang inside me, deep inside my heart. And that's why I know that we could never afford to be in a sin of omission. We have to always open this mouth and call it like it is. Regardless if they're going to get upset, regardless if they don't talk to us anymore, what good does it do to have the friendship of your children or your friends if they are in danger of condemnation and you never open your mouth? So what good does it do to befriend them if you might lose them forever? So it's more important to understand that salvation is first, even if people get upset. It's like people are going to get upset when you tell them to let go. It's like I always give the example. If you have a pet and you are watching your pet in the backyard, all of a sudden you see your pet dragging something out of the ground and comes up with a dead rat, a poison rat. You run with all you have to get it off his mouth. But once you try to get it off his mouth, the dog is going to bite you, right? Because you're taking the meat away. It's not aware that it's poison in the rat, in that piece of meat. So by trying so badly to take it off the mouth. But that is what happens when we are in mortal sin. We are just chewing on that, and if someone comes to take it off, we bite. But we have to dare to take it off, because they're going to die if we don't take it off. So this is the way we have to think about it. We have to do this. So obedience is also to acknowledge that people are in danger. That is obedience too. Because what good does it do if I'm all obedient to God, I'm following this way of righteousness, and I don't do nothing for the others to do it. And I'm blind about everybody else's life, and then I don't want to rock anybody's boat, and everybody comes along, I want to get along with everyone. Then therefore I'm the righteous one that never said a word. That is going to be against me, because that is not obedience. That is disobedience, because obedience to God is not only I getting my act straight. Obedience to God is making sure everybody else is also doing it. And by my example and by my exhortation, I have to exhort time on time and off time, like St. Paul says. And we are to understand what the Lord says. The Lord says, if I have someone in front of me in mortal sin, and I do not exhort that person, his sins are going to fall upon me. But if I go and exhort the person that is in mortal sin, those sins are no longer on me, because I already did the job. And then God is not going to charge me with that. But if I am a righteous person, obedient to God, and someone is beside me, right in front of me, it's not an accident that God placed that person in mortal sin in front of me. I have to very kindly, charitably, and with a lot of compassion tell this person, listen, I'm going to tell you something that probably you're not going to like. And I don't mean to get involved in your business, but this is the business of God. And I am to do this, because if I don't do it, I'm going to carry with your own sins. And I tell you, what you're doing is a mortal sin, and it's not good that you do it. So whatever you're going to do, I don't know what you're going to do about it, but that is wrong and it's dangerous, because you can get hurt eternally with this. And that is the end of the story. You have to say that. There's no negotiating, no compromising anything. And this is obedience. This is what has to do. That's why a lot of people are confused about the word obedience. They think obedience is for you to straighten up and do things right. But obedience involves a lot of stuff. Obedience involves to love everyone. It's like you stand in the street somewhere and you have to ask God to give you the love for all those strangers. Otherwise, you're not obeying to the laws of love. Because how come you only love exclusively to those that are given to you, and the rest are not important? You're indifferent to everyone else. So you're not obeying to the gift of love. And then the forgiveness. You have to forgive not only people that offend you, not only people that are against you or hate you or despise you. You have to also forgive people you don't like and you don't even know why you don't like them. So you have to forgive them. How many times we see people, even in TV, and you end up hating them and speaking ill of them, you don't even know those people. You don't even, you see somebody in the newspaper and you begin to talk ill of them, and you never met those people. You have no idea, you have no proofs that what they claiming about them is true, and you're already gossiping about them and judging them and making all kinds of statements. And people, we grow up in this culture being very selective, in a spirit of division. See, we are divided by races, by cultures, by traditions, idiosyncrasies, by intellectual levels, and politics and economics, and so many things divide us. So when we become spiritual, the first thing we have to let go is of all of those divisions. We are not to look at each other for what we represent. We have to look at each other for what we are. And we are children of God. We are the family of God, all human beings. Without exception, we are all the family of God, regardless of color, regardless of culture, regardless of economies and politics and ideologies and philosophies. We are the same, all of us. And if you don't make it to look at life that way, you're going to have a long time of purification. Because purgatory is made of this, what I'm just saying. Purgatory is made of teaching you what you didn't obey. That's what purgatory is all about. Purgatory is a state of purification of all of your disobedience. Exactly that's what it is. So, heaven is obedience. Heaven is the realization of obedience. That's what heaven is. Salvation. What is salvation? Obedience. That's what salvation is all about. What is coherence? Coherence is obedience. What is purity? Purity is obedience. What is honesty? Honesty is obedience. Everything is obedience, because if I am honest, I'm obedient to that virtue, right? If I am pure, I'm obedient to that virtue of purity. So I am always in obedience in order to be virtuous. And I'm always in obedience in order to be of God. Therefore, heaven is obedience. And hell, disobedience. So purgatory is a state of purification for those that disobey and were saved by grace. That's what it is. So now, if we really place ourselves on the table to examine ourselves and examine our lives, we have to come up with a good accounting, right? And say, how obedient have I been in my life? And repent and understand that you have to come to terms with your own faults and come to terms with your reality. How obedient have you been? How brave have you been to exhort people? Obviously, there is something very important here to know. You will not be able to exhort anyone if you are not making it yourself. Because what good does it do to tell people to be straight when you're crooked, right? That doesn't work. It's like if I am an alcoholic and I come and tell the rest of the alcoholics that hang out with me, don't drink. Oh, that's horrible. Don't drink. And I'm totally drunk, right? So I don't have authority. I don't have a spiritual authority to do that. They make fun of me. Yeah, I have another one. Just well, that's what they're going to tell you. But if you stop drinking and you go to your alcoholic friends and say, hey, you should stop drinking, and you are sober, that has authority, because that will make the point. They were going to see, they're going to feel that you have authority, because you were not long ago you were drunk with them, and then you were doing the same thing they were doing, and you stopped. You changed. You made the move. That is authority. That belongs to the truth. And that is what we are all about. We have to move towards obedience in everything. In everything, if we lie, we have to stop lying and tell other people not to lie when we see them lying. And all of these vices can be corrected with virtue, as long as we become virtue. Because if we are vice and we still worship in vice, we will never be able to establish virtue in any way or with anybody. So God is asking us truly to be very aware of obedience and in a full dimension of it. Obedience is to understand that we are children of God. That is obedience. You know, the first act of obedience is to recognize yourself as a creature created by the Creator. That is the first move of obedience. If you don't acknowledge God as your Father, your Creator, you are not in obedience yet. See, that's why if you don't understand that you were created, and someone created you, someone, God created you, you are still not standing in obedience. Because how could you be obedient when you don't even acknowledge your own creator? So that is very basic. It's like the foundation of obedience is to recognize yourself as a creature created by the Creator. That is the foundation of obedience, because that sets you up where you are. It places you in a reality, and then from there on, you venture into your life. You go out and you branch out with your own life and the gifts of God, your talents and your longings, and you go into the realms that God is opening for you. Because each one of us is extended through the will of God. And God extends and places the will on us, and we travel through that. We long through that, and our heart breathes through all of this incredible longing that God gives us. It's like a hunger, a thirst that God gives us for goodness, for the realization of the love in us that is infinite. And that is very different of greed and ambitions of this world. That is a longing, but it's the wrong longing. It's a thirst, the wrong thirst. It's a hunger, the wrong hunger. But when we deal with God, God makes us hungry for the truth, hungry for love. And then we stand ourselves towards this longing of goodness, and then we have this growing, this constant growing into the light. And every time we are even brighter, every time we are brighter, we have more light. And every time things are better, regardless of the struggles and the battles we have to face every time. Because I tell you something, when you live and walk with God, the closer it gets to the end, the tougher the battles. Oh, the more stiff they are. Because you are reaching the end and the devil knows it. So he's going to test you left and right. You know, every mile we walk towards God, there is a toll plaza. And then a demon comes out and says, pulls the pole down and says, where are you going? I'm going to heaven. Oh, really? What about this? Boom. Test. Right? And if you don't have money to pay, you don't pass the pole. Right? You don't pass the toll. And it's always very expensive. Every stop is expensive. Every toll plaza. You see, you go there, there's always a stop. And you stop there, you hang in there. I wonder what's going on now. See, something is happening here. And then you have to be ready to pay, because you don't know how much they're going to charge you. So you better be prepared. And the closer you get home, the more expensive the toll plazas, right? It keeps on going up and going up. It's like New York toll plazas or Florida, something like that. Something outrageously expensive. Or France. I was just driving through France, and it was toll plaza was 35 euros. I said, what? 38. One was like 49. I said, we were just going insane. But this is what happens. We have to understand that the devil is going to charge us, but we have a way to get the money for that. See, we will be tested, but we are able to pay. It's just that it's painful to pay, because we think that what we accumulate, that is our gain, we think is to keep. But you see, test means you pay with what you have, and if you are able to let go, you are able to pay right away. The thing is that we get attached to what we gain, and then that's what it sounds and feels so expensive. Because they're charging us and we don't want to let go of what we got. When the key is to let go of everything anytime. And that way you're free. Why is he charging you? Trying to find out if you're attached to what you have. And then if you're attached to what you have, it's going to hurt. You're going to be stuck. You're going to lose time until you let go and say, okay, take it all. Right? It's like you are successful in your business. Everything is working. And then you are a good person. You are protected, you are serving everyone, you are generous, you're helping the church, you're being a good father or a good citizen, whatever you are in goodness, right? All of a sudden, you are in a bankruptcy. Everything falls apart. No money, you are broke, everything went down, you're losing everything. So all you're doing is trying to hang to what you have. Hang to that. Even though you are dying and everything is telling you, let go of everything. It's the time to let go. Just give it up and say, okay, if I have to give everything up, I give it up, and that's it. See? Then I start from zero. So if you don't dare to do that, then the devil is going to get you. Because he's going to work it through your attachments, through your greed, through you hanging on to things that are obviously time to let go of them. Because God teaches us that way. See, God is always watching over us because He loves us. And He wants us to make it. And the devil is capitalizing, using all of these opportunities. So it's like, a few days ago, my spiritual father went to my home, to my mother house in Colombia. He's a monk. And he's not attached to material things because they give all that up. But all of a sudden, he slept in a room they have for me down there. And then he talked to me through Skype, and he said to me, "Oh, I don't know why they let me sleep in that room, because I fell in love with a picture you have of Our Lady of Guadalupe in your room. Can you let go of that picture? I'm taking it to my chapel." I said, and for a second it hurt me. I went like, "Oh, how is he going to take that? He's a monk. He shouldn't take that." That was inside me, and I couldn't believe I was thinking like that. And my stomach went like this when he said that. And then I said, "Of course you can take it," but it was so painful. I was like, "Of course." But then he said, "Oh, but there is more." He said, "You know that statue of Our Lady that you have on top of the fireplace, down by that?" I said, "Yes, what's going on with it?" He said, "Well, can I take it too?" That was a big test. I let go of all of that, but I'm just trying to tell you that for a second, I had a hard time. For a second. I went like, "No, he's a monk. No, why is he picking things up? He's not supposed to be." And then I said, "So who are you?" I said, "Who are you?" The one that is accumulating things, and being attached to statues and pictures and things like that. So it was like little things like that shows you where you're at. Shows you. When I came back to California after my conversion, all of my life I was so attached and attracted to automobiles. Because my first big present I had, I was 3 years old, and they gave me this big fire truck. And it was extraordinary. And I was so in love. That was the biggest damage they did in my life when I was little. Because I was like enchanted with cars since I was little. The Lord showed me the day that happened. I was 3 years old. My grandfather brought me this extraordinary fire truck. And since then, I became completely attached to that. So I developed this attraction, and I had a collection of cars. I used to race cars in California as a hobby, and I was always buying speed cars and very expensive cars, what have you. When I came back, I knew I had to let go of all of that. So I thought, I'm free of that. And one day I was in Beverly Hills, there in California where I live. I was standing on a corner with a friend, and this car went by. And I was looking at that car, every detail of this car, all the way, like this, like that. I was slobbering, right, like that. And my friend was even looking at me like, "What's wrong with this guy?" So I went and I said, "My God, look at me. I am completely bewitched by this, and I don't even know it. What good did it do? What good does it do to get rid of what I had and not to have the cars I used to have when I'm still completely enchanted with this?" And I had to work on that for a while. It took me months that I was in the street just standing there in places where you see all the type of cars I liked, and I was going and looking at them. Do I still like them? Are they still getting me? What? And I was testing me left and right. And until one day it was gone. And you know when that happened? It was 9/11. And I was a missionary in the East Coast of the U.S. I was in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I had to go to a lot of cities in the East Coast. But all the airports were closed. See? And I had these engagements. So I was with the charismatics in Indianapolis. And this charismatic woman went knocking at the door because she was to take me to the airport that day. And then we knew I couldn't fly. And she said, "I know your itinerary. So you have to go where you are called. And we know that we have to give you a hand today. So what we figure is we're going to give you a car. And you're going to drive." And I said, "Wonderful." So they brought me this little Volkswagen Golf. Right? That was the gift. And I had to do like 4,000 miles or something. That was because that was all the driving I had to do in those days, right? In this little Volkswagen Golf, and that was the biggest test of my life, because I got in that car. I was going like, I can't believe my life now, what I turned to be. And there was something in me that was miserable, right? But something in me that was holy. So it was the two fighting against each other. See, the one that wanted the cars, the other one that said, it's not good to like a car like that. Just be humble and accept this car. It's just a vehicle that's going to take you. But those two were fighting and fighting. And it took me like probably 1,000 miles to accept that little Volkswagen, you know? And every time I will stop at a gas station and look at the car, I was going like, oh, but that was the final that was the final healing. I was healed, you know, because during that trip I was completely healed from that. Never again did I ever care for that. As a matter of fact, one time I was in Malaysia, and that was Kuala Lumpur, and this Chinese woman came along and said, would you like to buy this ticket? It's a raffle for a very luxurious car. I forgot. I think it was Lamborghini or something. And I said, I was tempted. I say, oh yeah, but I'm in Malaysia. So, and I'm leaving the next day, going back to Europe or something. And then for a second, I was caught up with the raffle, like attracted to the picture of the car and all of that for a second. And then she looked at me and said, what's wrong? You're not going to buy it? I said, no, I'm not going to buy it. I'm leaving town tomorrow. But I had to say it really loud, because it was still creeping on me. It was still just like somewhere it was coming like this. And imagine, this kind of stuff happens to us with everything. With everything. We are attached to a lot of stuff. And imagine, purgatory is made of that. Exactly that. And if we don't begin by letting go now, it's going to be terrifying when we die. Because when we die, it's going to be very slow to let go. Very, very slow. Because now we are in a state of grace, and we are able to let go, because we are in a material world. And then we are facing matter. It's like I was facing the cars. One, like this, facing them. And then I could let go of them because they were right in front of me. It's like what happened to me with women, When I came back also, I had the same problem. I was the most promiscuous human being. I always had a woman, but always in the wrong way, because I left my wife and I never had a wife again. I just had many women. And all my life was about women. I was worshiping women. And I spent millions with women. And when I came back, I was just thinking, how am I going to do this? This is going to be impossible, because I'm so enchanted, so attractive. And I'm not saying this in the wrong direction, because I love women and respect women very much. But I didn't do it then, Before, women were something different to me. And unfortunately, but that's what happened in my life. So this working to be delivered from the image and the conception I had of women was the toughest work ever. Imagine, I couldn't look straight to Our Lady's statues. Couldn't look at her. I was going like praying to Our Lady, looking to the side, because I couldn't look at her, because the idea and the image I have of women, I couldn't look at Our Lady. See, and it took me for a long, and she was the one that helped me out. She was the one that helped me out to drag me out of this horrible, horrible relationship I had with women, to clean up. To clean up and bring myself back to where I belong, where I'm supposed to be as a child of God, where I'm supposed to respect a human being the way God created it. Children of God. I cannot place my eyes with concupiscence on people, and desire the flesh of someone in a mischievous way and in an impure way. And all of this was a torment to me, because I was almost looking away all the time. I couldn't look at women in the eye. I was tormented because my ideas and my attraction was wrong all the time. And that was like a poison in me. I was poisoned. And I could feel the poison all over me. And it was terrible, because I felt like I was possessed by an impure spirit. And I wasn't possessed, but I knew I had this force on me, because I had so much traffic. And I let the spirits use me for so many years. I had all kinds of scars of impurity. So anytime a woman that was attracted will come around me, I was completely destroyed. I didn't know how to behave. I was trying to do something else. And I didn't know how to express myself because I was totally crooked. So I'm trying to hide my sin, going like, what am I going to do? And besides, when I became a missionary, it was even more horrible. It was a nightmare. I'm speaking here about purity, and my eyes are going to the left and to the right, and I'm going, oh no, what am I going to do? I'm going to be condemned. Because if I stand here to present purity to people and I'm the most impure human being, then that is horrifying. It's going to be against me. The devil is going to nail me completely. So this was a big struggle and a big fight. And I'm not going to tell you that I'm not tempted through my sexuality. I am tempted, but I am not impure as I was. The Lord cleaned up my whole image of women, and this was the biggest gift He ever gave me. Because I told the Lord one day, when I came out of my kidnapping, and I came back into this new life, I said, Lord, you send me a holy wife, or turn the switch off, right? Because you either clean me up, or send me a holy wife, because I have to balance myself somehow. But He never sent me a wife, but He straightened me up. So I never went on my knees and promised the Lord chastity. You see, never. I never did that. But I became chaste just because the Lord gave me the gift. And I have been living in chastity for all these years, and I haven't even made an effort to that. It just happened naturally. It just took place, and it's just the way it went. And then the longer I stayed chaste, the cleaner I became as far as my vision of life towards women, and it just clean up completely, I'm far from being a holy person, but one thing is for sure, I'm fighting against every vice, because it is the only way to make it. And I know I have seen it with my own eyes. If we don't fight against vice head on, we're never going to make it. We're never going to make it. And we have to be sincere. We have to be completely sincere and find out who we are. What am I? I could see, I am a wreck. I am completely filled with vices. I'm vicious in all of these senses. And then you have to understand that. Because I noticed in my life that the only way I have been able to deliver myself from some of the vices, I still have some I'm working on, obviously, but the ones that I have been able to overcome with God's help only, is because I confronted them head on. I went in front and I say, yes, I am that. I have that. I have to overcome this. I am not through with it yet. I don't want to go on denial. See, I want to do it. And there is nothing better in your life. Nothing ever better in your life than to overcome a vice. This is the greatest thing you could ever do. Because you feel freedom. You feel God closer to you. You feel better as a human being. There is peace in you and joy, because you're not a slave anymore to that kind of sin. And it's just incredible to feel that way. And I wish we could let go of everything we're slaves to, because that is the maximum freedom. That's only going to happen at the end. But as long as we are working on this all the time, we are working towards freedom. That is the reality. So I'm going to ask the Lord for His word. We could be here forever talking about obedience, because I think obedience is one of the most incredible areas for us to work, because everything depends on that. It's like people, priests, they have all these vows, and religious people, obedience, poverty, chastity, and all of that is impossible to achieve if they don't have obedience. See, if they don't have obedience, what good is for you to be chaste when you are not really chaste in your heart? Some people can be chaste because they don't exercise their desires, but their hearts are completely troubled and crooked, and though they don't exercise it, they are crooked, so they are impure. That's why Jesus taught us that just by looking and desiring, we are already sinning. So we have to understand that we have to let go of everything from inside, because it's like a husband that pretends to be faithful, but he is wanting every woman around, and enjoying them. Everyone enjoying it the wrong way. So that is not a faithfulness. That is not loyalty. Something is wrong with your heart, and you have to straighten up. You have to clean up your act, because you have to be real, you have to be sincere in order to make it the way God wants us to make it. Otherwise, we will never have peace. Never. So I'm going to read to you what I open here. It's St. Luke, and it's chapter 7 from 36 on. And it says, Jesus, the woman, and the Pharisee. One of the Pharisees asked Jesus to share his meal. So he went to the Pharisee's home and as usual reclined on the sofa to eat. And it happened that a woman of this town, who was known as a sinner, heard that he was in the Pharisee's house. She brought a precious jar of perfume and stood behind him at his feet, weeping. She wet his feet with tears. She dried them with her hair and kissed his feet and poured the perfume on them. The Pharisee who had invited Jesus was watching and thought, if this man were a prophet, he will know what sort of person is touching him. Isn't this woman a sinner? Then Jesus spoke to the Pharisee and said, Simon, I have something to ask you. He answered, Speak, Master. And Jesus said, 2 people were in debt to the same creditor. One owed him 500 silver coins, and the other 50. As they were unable to pay him back, he graciously canceled the debts of both. Now, which of them will love him more? Simon answered, the one, I suppose, who was forgiven more. And Jesus said, You are right. And turning toward the woman, he said to Simon, Do you see this woman? You gave me no water for my feet when I entered your house, but she has washed my feet with her tears and dried them with her hair. You didn't welcome me with a kiss, but she has not stopped kissing my feet since she came in. You provided no oil for my head, but she has poured perfume on my feet. This is why I tell you, her many sins are forgiven because of her great love, but the one who is forgiven little has little love. The word of the Lord. So we praise the Lord and we thank Him, and we prepare ourselves for a good tea.